Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens, Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram, and this is fucking talking shit with Eagle. This is episode number 74. Man, I have been nervous all day trying to get my gut in order for this interview with this great legend of a man. We all know who he is right in front of us. I kind of described preparing this interview today, much like trying to stare down the barrel of a knowledge shotgun. It was just very intimidating, no matter how I went about it. But in the end, right before the show, I had a brief conversation with my daughter that reconfirmed, Dad, you got this. So kind of set me a little bit at ease knowing that she had my back. So without further ado, let me introduce the man of the hour, Mr. Kevin Jodery. How are you doing tonight, Mr. Jodery?
I'm doing great. Doing great. You call me Kev.
Okay, how you doing tonight, Kevin?
I'm doing great.
First and foremost, you want to let everybody, I'm sure they know where to find you, but some of the key points where they might be able to find you outside of here?
Let's
Instagram,
see.
Maybe a website.
Yeah, I bet you can hit me up at, I'm Kevin Jodery, period. So like I have kevinjodery.com as a website, which is like a bunch of the work that I've done. And sometimes I update it if I'm doing speaking engagements so people can kind of see where I'm moving around. And IG, I'm just Kevin Jodery on IG. And that's pretty much it. I'm Kevin Jodery on YouTube, but I have those channels to take a look, but really I'm featured more on other people's stuff than I do my own work, where like I only release stuff myself when like I get inspired, like something just catches me and I'm like, man, this has to be covered. So I put it out. But most of the stuff is just, playlist stuff where you can just kind of search me up. And, just like right now, it's just awesome to get to be able to have a chance to talk to you online. It opens up new conversations.
For sure. I never saw this sets a new bar for the show, Kevin. I don't know how much higher the show can go right here as far as a standard. I know everybody's, jokingly asked for this interview since day one, and I was like, yeah, I'll put out that. I extend that invitation out there, and I did. And the day you answered it, I was like beside myself. So it's an honor that, and it just shows to the length of the character that you really are, that you're willing to help somebody out like myself, and do something like this. That because I'm really nobody in the cannabis industry, just somebody trying to do a show to spotlight some great people in the industry. And I'm sure you had no idea what you were getting into or who you were dealing with tonight, but you didn't bat an eye. You were like, hell yeah, I'll be there. And I appreciate that. Like I said, it really shows what a genuine great character you are.
Thank you. To me, and the thing is, you said, you're not a big player in the game, but nobody is. None of us are big players in the game. Like if you put that tag on yourself, you're probably full of shit. It's really like we're playing the game and we're trying to play together. And to me, cannabis has been so good to me my whole life that I look at it as like a microcosm of the bigger picture, where within cannabis, if you can be cool, then you can be cool outside of cannabis. And so being able to be invited to be part of your show is just, there's no ranking in it, man. I'm just as honored that you're asking me to be on and speak to you as if it was someone else. And the part about it was that you were polite when you hit me up. You hit me up and said, hey, this is what I do. I'd like to have you on the show and we can talk about some cool stuff. And I said, I'm down. Because that's what we're trying to do really is catch people in cannabis appreciation so that you can develop the next wave of cultivators, the next wave of consumers, and you get to be in something in perpetuity. I've been in this my entire life, but I want to see it continue. And the only way that's going to happen is if you share info and if you get a chance to communicate with people in these kind of methods. And so this digital shit's been kind of cool. COVID's been a nightmare. And we won't even get into the all the racial shit that's going on, because that's been out of control for hundreds of years. But the fact that people are using the digital tool to communicate and to connect and to share because they're kind of trapped, it's just been pretty nice. So thank you for having me on.
Well, like I said, I've spent the whole day and a good part of last night just consecutively listening to interview after interview. Not that I haven't listened to most everything you put out there, but just to kind of bone up and prep up for this and kind of prepare some questions. And when I come out to in the end of this is, man, it's hard to put together a question for somebody that has really laid so much information out there. I mean, there isn't a lot that you haven't covered or been on record of talking about. And it's, uh, the the knowledge you have acquired over the years, your whole history is quite fascinating, to say the least. I mean, as far as just being a leader in the industry, I mean, you've got to be one of the realest people I've seen in the industry, and one of the most straight up people that I've ever seen in the industry, as far as, just laying it out there and being true to, who you ever were. I'm sure this person in front of me now is much like the same person that was hustling back in the day. And, it's much respect to you for staying true to your roots and true to yourself, more or less, throughout this whole thing.
Thank you, thank you. I got lucky though, man. I got raised around people that was strong, and so you learn to be strong, which means that you stand up for yourself. And cannabis was this incredible world where there was a lot of real people and there was a lot of good shit. And the problem is that not many of us that were from like the real game made it into the new game. And so, you see this new paint job of what the picture looks like, because a lot of the people that really painted it weren't able to move into the new realm. And for so many of them, exposure is so scary. And for me, I recognize that even though I wasn't somebody who was ever very, I was always cautious about what I did in terms of exposure prior to medical cannabis. Once I get into medical cannabis, what I realized was that you had to be able to stand up and speak without a bag on your head or a voice transducer so that people could recognize you, because no one was listening to anybody that had bags on their heads or was speaking with the voice modulator. And what I wanted was, I really wanted to be able to start to change the perception that for us in cannabis, we weren't brain damaged. There wasn't like that was the only thing we could do was go get high and grow pot. It was an art. And spoken herb wasn't just about getting high and lifted. It was about doing it with other people and making real connections. And so to me, there was this incredible complexity in cannabis and this elegance and beauty and how people connect around it. And I just realized that, like, if I didn't get out into the public when I was building those operations, then I wouldn't be effective. And that the people that I needed to reach to let them see that there was normalcy, so to speak, they wouldn't catch it. And I knew the only way that was going to happen is if I was honest. And I just said, look, I'm a career trafficker. I've been hustling since I was a fucking kid. I'm, career grower. If I'm giving you an opinion, it's because I'm trying to give you some perspective, but I'm not trying to sell you a damn thing. I'm not asking you to do anything. It's just that I don't want to see you have to struggle to move forward. And that's been the gist of all this information, was to be able to kind of platform who you are so that people can get a pretty consistent view. Because if you see me 200 times and you see the same message woven in, no matter where I'm at, what I'm doing, how high I am, how high I'm not, it starts to give you a surety that must be a perspective and that it's not a pitch. And I think that in cannabis, I think especially the people that are coming into cannabis, they need to see that. And I can't believe it's me delivering the info, but it's the fact that the people need to see somebody who's trying to honestly approach the situation, to share information, to bring awareness, and not to be condescending in the delivery of it, so that you start to get people to embrace the craft, embrace the art, embrace the connections that cannabis brings. And that's been the goal the whole time. So I'm glad that it worked because you know, I'm on your show tonight. So it's been good.
Well, I appreciate that. And well, in preparing for this and trying to come up with a question list, you know, there's so many great questions out there, and I know there's going to be some in chat. I've got a couple from you know, a good friend, and I'll call him a co-host, Smiley's Garden, who helps us show out quite a bit. But in the end, I kind of thought, well, I'm going to take the tack that I most always do with everybody else. I know you're a wealth of knowledge as far as growing and everything else goes. I'm kind of interested in the hustler aspect myself, from one hustler to another. I think it's the basis. You can't teach that shit in college, and you can apply it to almost everything. So I'm kind of interested in the hustle, but moreover, this is like the show is an opportunity to get up and close to the people that we see in the cannabis community, the big growers, the little growers, and the icons like yourself. So, like I always do, I guess I kind of start from the beginning, if you don't mind. Can you just like maybe tell me a little bit where you started on this journey, that first time? I'm sure you get this about a lot, but can you tell me about that first time you actually took on the plant and held it in your hand and
Yeah,
smoked it?
yeah.
I mean,
I was first time I got high. I was 12. It was. I remember it real well, man. It was this. It was the summer between sixth grade and seventh grade, and my partner, his dad was a cop, and he used to jack people for their herb when he was arresting them, and then my buddy would steal the herb from his dad. So he had access to some hot grass, right? And so this was back when pipes we used to have metal pipes and stuff that were made out of all these chambers and all these pieces. And I remember going up on the roof of my house in that, it was like probably end of July or August, and burning up on the roof. And we went down in my garage and we turned on a strobe light, and we were riding bicycles I had a giant garage as a kid. And we were riding bicycles in the garage at each other in the strobe light, swooping around, like doing little bike stunts like we were doing. But this time I was lit up on herb. And it was like I had left and went into another fucking dimension. And I had always wanted to puff because herb was so prevalent in my neighborhood because there was so much trafficking going on. And the funny thing was, I think so much of it was the people who sold herb were always happy. So as a kid growing up, you know, in the street, the people that were happiest were the ones that sold pot. And so for some reason I connected being happy with selling weed, and I assumed it must be because they're smoking it too. And so I wanted to smoke pot and try it, and I got a chance, and I just fell in love with it. But you know, as you go forward, your relationship refines with it. But when I was a kid, it was just, you know, you wanted to get high and then go do wild shit because it felt so good to be lifted and be out of your circumstances you were in. And so my neighborhood had a heavy crime influence, where you had a lot of trafficking in drugs, a lot of cats that were armed robbers, hot cars, fences. It was just good, you know, good old school New England East Coast crime neighborhood. And because of that, you kind of see a reel in the thing. So, you know, when you're talking about herb and stuff like that, you're talking about people that are bringing it up off the ships out at sea and bringing it into the neighborhood and breaking it down. And it's, you know, it's your growing up and it's your relatives doing this, and it's your buddy's older brothers that are chopping up the bales and bagging them up. And so you kind of, you know, you see this and you learn to keep your mouth shut, and you work in some minor capacity as an assistant until you're able to pick up your own hustle. And that was the beginning. So I never thought about herb having any kind of medical benefits. You know, I knew that there was studies, because even back then they talked about the medical benefits with, this would have been in late 70s, but there was the anecdotal information that had been moved through cannabis that it had benefits historically through people. Well before any books were written or any information was out, people in the neighborhood knew this. And it must have just been the stories that had been passed down for millennia about cannabis culture, you know? And so we knew that there was medical benefits, that it did something for your eyes. And we just knew that it made you feel good when you smoked it. And we had access to all this different grass that was pouring into the neighborhood as the world harvested and then the herb was moved through ship traffic, around the world, my neighborhood would receive the stuff coming in from Colombia, the stuff coming in from Afghanistan. The loads I liked the most were the ones that were right around the end of August, 1st of September. That was always the Thai. So the Thai used to hit New England around September. And it was just, stunning weed. It visually different than today because we're morphologically addicted to appearance. But the grass that was popping into the neighborhood then was supernatural. And I was lucky that I got to hang out with guys that were really in the game. And so they kind of let me be around it, and I got mentored by them. And my family was involved in organized crime, and that was real heavy. And so I didn't desire to do organized crime. I didn't have any desire to go the route a lot of my friends did, because I was visiting relatives in prison since I was young, and so I didn't want to be part of syndicate type work, because I just saw that no matter what you did, you inevitably ended up doing a large stretch of time. You did a bid in the joint. And so herb to me was like this thing that kind of let you enjoy this like a freedom lifestyle, but wasn't violent crime. And I ended up catching a case when I was in like 83, and I spent 11th grade when I was in high school and training school for cultivation and distribution. But other than that, stretch when I was a kid, that was the only time I did in incarceration over herb. I fought a couple of cases as an adult, but I was adult enough to be able to afford legal teams that could fight and drag it on and spend a couple of years to work a case out. That's like the gist of the legal system, is that if you're not financially secure, you're about to get ripped. The legal system is designed to really beat up on the poor and minorities. And so if you're able to make sure you get yourself out of that situation financially, that's the only time you can really work with the legal system. And so I was fortunate as an adult, but as a kid, I caught that case then, and I was just fascinated with grass, man. I knew people that had collections where all through the year they would collect the best grass, and they used to use them in fishing tackle boxes, and they put them in baby food jars, and you'd go over to the house and they would break out what was the best samples of the best batches and what was the best shit. And I was just fascinated with that stuff, because you're getting to see, the history of the world, because all those things were not local. So you were seeing, California Sensimilla, you were seeing herb coming out of Hawaii directly, stuff out of Mexico, Southern California, Afghanistan, Thailand, Colombia, Caribbean. I mean, just shit, good grass. So my background in it was just one of like true appreciation.
Man, I can't imagine starting with such an advanced start there. There was nothing like that here in Michigan, where we just had what we had, much less a harbor of different world harvests coming in, and we just had brickweed back then. We were lucky to have a little bit of harvest in the fall there, but for the most part, I remember nothing but brickweed coming up. So I can't imagine having a plethora of kinds and top quality running through our town back then. It must have been an amazing experience growing up.
Oh, dude, the neighborhood was wild, and the people were wild, and that was part of the experience too, is that you got to be around some individuals that were just fucking straight characters, and a couple of them were really, really good to me. And I mean, I had a lot of good friends, but there was a couple of them that were really good to me, and there was a couple of older cats that were really good to me too, in a sense where they allowed me to look at the world they were in and enjoy all the little nuances and details. And as like an older guy, I realized that it was like mentorship, where you see a young kid in the neighborhood and you see potential in them, and there's a common good where the older person can see a good in the younger person, and they honestly want to see you do well. And so it allowed me to access just some incredibly knowledgeable, intelligent, well-connected players. And I remember coming home, like, I used to go, I was in high school, and I would go over to these dudes' houses with my book bag right out of like 9th grade and go hang out with straight full-blown traffickers, and then chill there and learn the hustle. and then go home and do my homework and do regular life shit. So I didn't really think about it at the time that it was, I thought it was, it was cool that I was getting to enjoy my life. I didn't really realize until I got older that I had been raised in this hotbed of global cannabis, surrounded by people that were most definitely highly skilled at what they did. And they all loved weed too. So it wasn't just the business. They loved weed. They would wait through the year to when the right batch came out, and then they come over and say, hey, the right batch came in. And that's when they would score their own herb for themselves to last for a time. All the good hash would come in, and the same thing. The good hash hit Boston. We'd drive up to Boston and go pick up blocks of the black because it was just exquisite. And that, I think, was just as important as being around all the herb, was being around people who really appreciated all the herb. And at that time in the 80s, I mean, shit, 83, the drug war really kicked in heavy through the Reagan era. And it turned into the machine that it is today. Nixon kicks it in 68, but by 83, man, it got funded, and it had become a full-blown dope war. And so at that time, 78 through 2, it was cool in New England in the herb game. And then 83 comes, and all of a sudden they start having, heavy enforcement presence. And that's when all my partners started getting hit and going to prison. And that's when I got caught and caught a case. And it started to be a real change to where they hyper penalized it. So herb was always like trafficking any other drug, really. If you were in herb, you were no different than if you were moving cocaine or heroin. It's same charges. So the cops looked at you the same way. But we didn't look at each other the same way. We knew the people who sold herb were different than people who sold coke, and most definitely different than people who sold heroin. And so all those people were in the neighborhood. But the herb deal is, like I said, when I was a kid, the cats that moved to herb always seemed happiest. And as a young guy growing up in a hard life, when you see people happy and having a good time consistently, it makes you wonder, the fuck are they doing that you're not doing? And I realized, well, I got you. They're making good money selling herb, and they also behave cooler than average people. There was I want to say a warmth, maybe the right word, where they were you could approachable. And that was something that I really liked about herb. And then as someone who became a career smoker, it was something that I realized could open up like a million doors. And so I used to use herb continuously to introduce groups of people. So you go to nightclubs or you go to events. If you break out grass that other people don't have, and you just break it out and start rolling it, it changes how people behave, because they can't believe they're going to get to smoke such good pot for free. Because usually, especially in California when I got here, herb was like restricted, man, where people were like, a little nugget was highly valuable. And when someone says you want to get high, they give you a little BB to put in a pipe. And you'd be like, what the fuck is that? It doesn't allow you to enjoy the herb. It lets you get high, but it doesn't allow you to feel relaxed with it, because you've made it so valuable that it's a commodity and not a cultural substance. And so because I always had access to large sums of cannabis, I was able to share cannabis and use it to get people to, hang out when we were chilling, and it would allow everyone to calm down and relax. And you'd end up having these really killer connections that were built from very dissimilar people. So to me, cannabis was like this bridge, and everywhere I've ever been, man, cannabis basically opened those doors. And because you're smoking herb and you're meeting dissimilar people all the time, you're learning from the herb to be thoughtful and to be gentle. And then the different people teach you perspective, so that when you're not smoking, you've gathered skills from the smoke and the introductions. And so you take that back into your regular life, and you become like a better human. So like the herb completes the circle about how you can teach yourself to see where relationships can be built, and how to approach other people's perspectives pretty evenly, not too judgmentally. And man, it's been just a killer. It's opened up a million doors for me, man. Without every time I think about like how my life went, it was really because I was in service to herb. That when I'm working for the girl, we call it, the queen, but when we're working for the queen, I'm all right. It's just honest service, and you always get rewarded. And she's always made sure there's been enough money to feed the kids. She's always made sure that I've had wonderful friendships to live life with. When I need spiritual uplift and I can blaze. When I'm having medical issues, I use cannabis to help me with medical issues, and it's been tremendous. And so, to me, it's like this. It's like super substance. It does everything.
It is a miracle plant. It is. It provides in so many ways, and I hustled early on too. And I'm curious to know. It sounded like when I started hustling, it was like so I could get my herb for free. Like most people, you get three friends that wanted, or at least three friends. Quarter, quarter, quarter. You got yours for free, and eventually that hustle moves up and moves up. But it initially started just to kind of cover my habit, but it doesn't necessarily sound like find hustling for you was a necessity to get smoke. You know what I mean? It sounds like it was pretty prevalent around you. So
Oh
what
yeah,
it's instilled the
the hustle,
hustle in you?
the hustling in me was that I came from my family was well to do. My mom was really educated, and my father was a savage. But when they got divorced, some bad shit happened to my mom, and we went poor. And so you go from being pretty affluent, went up to about 12, and then you're poor. And so poverty teaches you a lot about what you need and what you don't. And the bottom line is, man, you need cash. And so hustling was a vehicle to help put money in my pocket to take care of me. And I was living on my own when I was in high school, and it paid for my electricity, paid the water bill, it bought food. Hustling was the herb comes with the hustle, but the hustle is the business end of the herb. And I wasn't working in herb to get free grass. I was using and I was smoking continuously because I'm moving herb. But it was really, the hustle was straight up financially driven, where I was a kid who needed to take care of himself because my situation as a youth was poor. And so I knew what money was, and I knew he no longer had me. And it was not the most pleasant situation. And so, like I said, a lot of my friends got into different kinds of crime, and it was rampant in the area. And it was really like a breeding ground, sifting ground for the mob. So from my neighborhood, you would really pull the good thieves, you'd pull the good drug dealers, you'd pull the good armed robbers, you pull the muscle, and you'd use them in service to the mob. I'm Irish, so most of the people in my neighborhood were, Irish, French, Portuguese, not Italian. So the Italians kind of controlled the underworld in the East Coast back in the 80s. And the rest of us form this layer below that upper echelon, but it's the real layer. It's the layer where the shit really hit the fan. And herb to me was the perfect place to be, because I didn't want to hurt anybody. And stealing, as being a professional thief, a lot of that is confidence too, where you're living this crazy life doing shit that's not healthy. And so I never saw cannabis as like drug dealing. That was the thing, is that I didn't see cannabis as something that was malignant, because I could have got into dealing other drugs too. Like I could have chose what I wanted to do in crime because it was so prevalent in my area. So I could have gone into moving other kinds of drugs. I could have got into other kinds of crime because everybody around me was full bore doing it. And I never regretted my choice, where herb was where I belonged. So selling herb, scoring herb, moving herb was where I belonged in the neighborhood hierarchy of crime. And it was cool because once I was, I got up into my, middle teens, I kind of understood herb pretty good. And so hustlers would have me come and check out the batches and look at the herb that was coming in. And so it was kind of cool, where you started, being able to use your skill set that you had developed so that other people could use your skill set. And it was almost like, you're a consultant as a kid looking at you're looking at products coming in. And it was so encompassing and big that I just knew that, man, I was just enthralled by it. But when I caught the case in 83 and I did the time, at that same time, a bunch of my friends caught some long bids, and my cousin was in jail for another crime, but he was doing about 200 years. So my cousin Ralph was involved in the Bond Vault robbery, and that was the largest robbery in U.S. history. And so there's a movie out. You can go check it out on the internet. It's called The Vault. But Don Johnson's in it, Chaz Palminteri. In that movie, my cousin's Buddy Providence, and he was a hammer for the mob, and then he was involved in that. And so I used to go visit Skip, and when you visit your family that you know is going to die in the joint, and then you're going to the joint to visit all your other buddies that are in the joint, I was like, maybe this shit isn't where we should go. And so I went in the military and became a diver. And it was while I was in the military diving that I did an operation with the drug cartel, where we searched a ship that was a drug trafficking ship. And during the search on the vessel for drugs, me and the crew were all chilling in the same spot. And we started to talk about diving because they were all divers too. And the next thing you know, we started talking about drug smuggling and selling drugs. And I was like, hey, I did the same thing you guys do now, but I just didn't do it at this level. And they were like, dude, herb is going to be the future. Like, fuck the drug war, fuck all this other stuff. Herb is the future. At some point, people will realize this is a legitimate substance because it had been legitimate for 14,000 years prior to 1930. So 1930 is this mark of where herb becomes dirty. But from 1930 back 14,000 years, herb was not dirty. Herb was this magic substance that was moved around the earth to do all this incredible shit. Well, these guys were smart enough to know that, and they realized they could see the trend swinging. And so they said, listen, what you want to do is be a diver and you want to go and do normal shit, which we understand, but really hustling and herb is who you are. And if you just went back to that lifestyle when you got out of the service, you'd be happier. And so I started studying botany when I was in the military. And then right when I got out of the service, I snatched up all my grow lights and started my first little indoor operation in Oakland, in 83. So I had grown outdoor from like 79, 80, 81, 82, 83. I got tapped. I don't grow in 84. I go in the military. And then I lit up again in 89. And this time, though, I was doing indoor in Oakland. And that was killer because I had my own little indoor going of some really killer California skunk. It was killer grass. I got it out of Mendocino. And then I had a buddy named Ralph that passed away, but I got some cuts off of him, and he was from Alameda, right? So another spot in the Bay. And he'd given me, he leaves a little note on my door of my crib, and he said, look on your porch. And I go out on the deck, and wrapped up in a trash bag is a whole arm of a cannabis plant where his mom had bumped into one of his plants in his yard and broke one of the limbs off. And he wrapped it up and gave it to me. And I learned how to do propagation on that plant. That was the first plant I ever did clonal propagation on, was 89 when Ralph threw me that branch. And I was like, wow. And I knew the value of it. And so I went and got a book on cloning. And I went and cloned it and struck roots, and I grew that. So I had something from seed out of Mendo that was incredible. I had that skunk. And then when I was in the Bay, I instantly started hooking up with cats again, where once I got out of the military, I already made friends in the streets because it's kind of where I was comfortable. But as soon as I got out of the service, the day I got out of the service, I went right back into hustling. And I was moving bricks out of Mexico to the East Coast. And so it was good because the crew that was bringing all the weight in from Mexico, I would take a look at the shipments, and we would start to talk to the people that talked to the growers, and I would show them product that was good that we needed, not what they were moving. And we were able to change the distribution of quality that was coming into the Bay, and at least through that squad, So I got to watch better and better grass keep coming in because they started realizing that it was moving faster and faster if it was better. And so that was like my commercial work. But the pot that I grew in my house, I only smoked that. And what I did is I smoked it publicly, where I would go out to events, I'd go to nightclubs. And at that time, an ounce of green was like, $450, $500. And shit, that's in the fucking 80s, right? So that's like $1,200 now, right? So a $1,200 bag of grass, people are not smoking that shit freely, and I'm only smoking it freely. And so it let me get connected into all these different spots because only hustlers can hustle with that much smoke. It's if any you it kind of indicates you have a substance of weight behind you. So other players will notice you. And then now you can meet people that are similar to you. And it started letting me tie into the Bay Area. And I had some really killer Mexican partners that I did the work with. And then I tied into through my brother. I had a brother named Azel who kind of became like really like my older brother. And he's my son's godfather. He passed away a couple of years ago too. But he was from Philadelphia, lived in Oakland, and he kind of took me on as like he was like his last apprentice. And he wasn't a hustler, but he was a mental hustler. But he was connected to a river of people, and through him, I got to meet all these cats in Oakland that were involved in moving herb and growing herb. And it was through that group there that I was able to bring my level of product that I was moving into the system up. And also, they became future clients when I started to build operations because I had a heavy construction skill set. And so I used to build grow operations. And so the next thing you know, you're meeting cats, you're growing herb, you're building operations. And I always knew that it was the genetics that had the value because bunk is bunk. And so I had my own little mini nursery operation running to feed this. And that would have been all early 90s. So early 90s, all that up to 90, 92 in the Bay. And then I moved to Humboldt in 92, 93, I'm fully here. And as soon as I got to Humboldt County, I did the same exact thing, man. I just started connecting with cats that were in the game and trying to figure out where in the game do I fit? And then how do I do a good job so that I can have stability and then enjoy the cannabis lifestyle, which is just cool. And at that time, it was private. So people knew what you were doing, but you weren't running around with the fucking I grow pot shirt on. And you were really smug. I used to change rigs. I used to change clothes. I had all these operations running all over the place. And so I would change my outfit. So we had grow houses everywhere, and certain grow houses, I made sure that the car looked like a car that fit that neighborhood. And I would wear a button-up shirt with a collar and have a briefcase when I went into the house, and I'd wave to the neighbors and then take all that shit off. And the whole house was a fucking sealed grow. And then I would leave again later in the night so that I didn't have to see any neighbors. But we made everything always look appropriate. If it was blue collar shit, you look blue collar. If it was white collar shit, you look white collar. You made sure that you didn't cause any kind of attention so that you didn't get hated. Because the bottom line is, man, with being in the herb game, everybody hated you because I think mostly they were pissed off that you were happy. You were so happy growing pot, smoking pot, and having a good pot life that the rest of society was furious that they had to go work some fucking job and be angry and be miserable. And they were mad at you that you were willing to take the risk, the crime, the punishment risk to live your life. And so you become this weird symbol of other people's lack of courage. And you're never doing it for that purpose, but you take on that identity. And so you have to be, now that's why it's so crazy. Now we're all running around screaming about how much herb we're growing. But at that time, man, you made sure that you were really cautious about what you did. And you only dealt with people at a certain level. And anybody below that level, you had someone else deal with them so that you're only dealing with people that were going to get fucked just as hard as you. Once you get to a certain size, you got to be smart who you play with because people are dangerous when they get angry. And the less you have to lose, the less I have to gain. And so really the only way you can have a true relationship is shared sufferation, where we're all going to get fucked if it goes south. Now you can be cool. That's really when things become okay. And cannabis was that thing. And I think it still is. And I think that, with all this, the racial tension going on, the beauty of cannabis was that cannabis was non-denominational. It didn't have sexual orientation either. So you did business with people that were gay. You did business with people that weren't your color. You did business with people who weren't your religion. And because you were making these connections with them, you really started to see humans as humans. And I think that shit it's crucial that the ability to find commonality in all people was something that is needed by people, but cannabis made that shit easy because you could all laugh and appreciate good grass. And when you're smoking, nobody's angry. And when you're smoking, usually you're not judgmental. And when you're smoking, sometimes, you forget what you were talking about. You just laugh. Like that's human, so it was good, man. It's been, the hustle was good. And then I get into all the medical and all the legal shit, and later in the 2000s. But all those years up to like 2005 was all in the game. And then, 2006, I take over a dispensary. So from 2006 to 2020, I've been running legal operations.
You mentioned there, how people hate, or, not necessarily hate, but frown on people that are, start off growing and smoking pot. You know what I mean? There's that, I don't know what exactly the word to put on it, but there's that hard feeling, if you will, when some people that have that 9 to 5 job, and they're miserable as it is before they even knew that you're a cannabis grower or whatever. But then they find out that you've made that transition, or you're trying to make that transition into a more better life that seems to be more meaningful all the way around. And you're right, even to this day, you get them people that are very quick to be judgmental and lay their negative feelings on it. Like even today, that there's something nasty wrong with what the cannabis growers doing today, and it's sad. I think it's more along the lines of like you said, that they're just miserable that they've taken the career path they have, and they just don't know how to get out of it, and they're just kind of bummed you're enjoying your life and the dedication you have to what you love.
They get indoctrinated in the school system. The school system indoctrinates you, and it teaches you some false hierarchy where if you do well, and there's a fucking difference between education and intelligence. People get really confused with that one. That I'm glad that you, and that it's not a fault against education, because I love education, but it's the belief that because you're conventionally educated, or you've gone through a specific system that says these things mean you're better or smarter or will be more successful. When that doesn't work, and you see people who didn't follow the same system that are successful, it gets frustrating. And the problem is that, most of the people you see on a day-to-day are middle class and below. Upper echelon people, you don't get to see them. They're living a different life than you are. They're not in the mainstream the same way. They're busy living their lives. But anybody middle class and down, you touch them, you see them. And so for all the years we've been in the drug game, so for me, like we'll say, 83 forward from that, when I got popped, that was also the change in affluency for that group, where the middle class started becoming less and less powerful financially from the 80s now. So for the last 40 years, they've really been on this diminishing curve of value. And so all that rhetoric that they got spoon-fed in the 50s about superiority, and how that generation was able to do all the stuff that they did, and they legitimately did it, but it was almost like subsidized. The government created a system that worked for a specific group for a time. And when the next wave of economic pirates come in and they take away that upward mobility, they didn't take away the educational system that went along with it and changed it. They kept you in the same educational model. And so you're over here putting your heart and soul into this system so you can be a good little soldier, and you come out of it and you're in debt. You can't afford anything. You're not getting respected. And you look over at your neighbor and he's got a fucking boat, and he's got a new truck, and you're hating him because you don't have a new truck. And you look at him and he's like, this prick's coming out of his house at 11 o'clock in a robe, drinking a coffee, because usually I'm coming out of my crib with a robe on outside. And people are fucking hating you. And they're hating you because you're not under the same weight they are mentally, where they bought into the system. And when they yell at you, the thing they always used to scream more than anything was, I pay my taxes. I used to hear that shit constantly from people. And you look at them and you're like, I fucking pay taxes too. I own a company. Just because I'm growing herb and I'm moving herb on the side, it's nothing to do with the other things that I'm doing that are legitimate. I said, so you're over here screaming that you're this fucking upstanding citizen as if you chose to do it. You're not choosing to do it. You're being forced to do it, and you're acting like that's noble. And complying with someone putting a fucking boot to the back of your head isn't noble. It's just you're basically they're breaking you down. And instead of getting mad at the system for breaking you the fuck down, you get mad at someone else. You blame someone else because you can't blame the system. Because if you blame the system, it's going to make you challenge every belief that you fucking had. And you see this with people a lot, man, when they grab an idea and they hold on to it so tightly that if you take it out of their hand, their fucking whole world collapses because that was the kingpin that held everything together. And the truth is that you can't live like that, man. You gotta be open-minded because we don't really know much. I mean, we know that we know a lot less than we think we know. And so since that's the case, the ability to be mentally flexible, emotionally flexible, and be able to use that to steer you, and then you keep some kind of like ethics rigidity where, you know, you make the decision that you're not going to fuck anybody over, you're not going to do fucked up shit to people. You hold that stuff as a mantra. That's just a guideline where I don't need to know anything about you. I just know that if I was in your house, I wouldn't touch your shit. I wouldn't rat you out. I wouldn't threaten you. I wouldn't cause you any kind of strain that made you feel uncomfortable in any way out of respect. That's the part you keep. But everything about what's possible has to be fluid. You got to be able to see the world as this constantly moving kaleidoscope, because it is. And as long as you can maintain, you know, your integrity in that form, and people put that shit on memes all the time, integrity, and I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck it means. But it means you hold the line even when it's not popular. That if you believe you're right and you can substantiate it, then you defend it. And that part guides you with all the other stuff. But mainstream, man, they get put through the school ringer, and then they go into the educational system after high school and they get extracted of all their money. And so they feel that they have this huge obligation to succeed because they're in debt right out the gate. And they go get jobs and they work for dudes or women that are fucking aggressive and shitty. And so they have to put up with it. Most people I know that have mainstream regular jobs drive 45 minutes to an hour to get to the job, especially if you're in the city. Holy shit. And so, you know, you're giving up fucking half of your day just to make a paycheck. Then you get a couple hours somewhere for you. Then you got to get enough rest to repeat that shit. And you look out the window and there's this short, ugly fucking dude who's chilling. And you're like, how the fuck is he chilling? And I'm that short, ugly dude. So it created this just super animosity all the time. And so now it's not there like it was, because you have the ability to quantify legitimacy, where cannabis is most definitely an extremely valuable substance, not just economically, but and spiritually, but they can't deny the medical aspects now. So finally you can say, look, the shit has validity, just shut the fuck up. And it's a craft, and now especially with essential. When they labeled cannabis essential, holy Christ, it broke people's hearts. They cannot believe that cannabis is more essential than their job. They are fucking tripping that their little powerhouse of life was not deemed important enough to continue, but us that are growers and movers of weed are, you know, just fucking nuts. And I love it because it shakes people's foundations of belief. It's good for you.
Oh, trust me, I am cheesing in this light right now, because I've based my, I've had, ups and downs journey. I've done a lot of hustling through my days, but I've based my life around cannabis my whole life. I've chosen work, my work, so I could maintain to be able to smoke and enjoy. 48, sir. I'm 48 years old. So I've always chose my career. I've always chose the career path so I could enjoy the plant there. And, I think it's when this all comes about in the essential terms, it's been like, I told you fuckers, you guys, the rest of you guys wasted your time on that alcohol and just all that other bullshit. And here I am, I think I look a lot younger than a lot of the folks I went to school with that are stuck in them dead end jobs and fucking that have been miserable all them years. And then now to, like you said, to be able to get that, essential kind of stamp, for being the caregiver and being in the cannabis industry is like, I never thought I'd see this day come full circle. And it's just amazing to see how far this plant has came in my lifetime. And
Oh,
it's funny now to see the same naysayers come back around and, well, maybe it's not that bad. Can I maybe hit that joint one time? And you're like, yeah, here you go. You guys been missing out this whole damn time. It's about time you open up your eyes.
no, and it's nice too that they have the ability to enter this world, and for most cannabis people are pretty nice, so that it's welcoming, because the beauty of cannabis is that it's inclusive. Everybody can have equal rank, under the smoke, and people need that. The economic beating that everyone's been taking is unifying, and it helps. America needed it. I'm not sure, like I mean, I traveled to other countries. They got their own issues in terms of how the population gets along, but with cannabis in the U.S., it's been very powerful because so many people were so heavily addicted to pharmaceutical drugs for anxiety, tension, and then any kind of injury, they medicated the shit out of them with opiates, so that they became basically fucking junkies on opiates. And instead of trying to work on the problem of what causes the pain, they just said, let's mask the pain. But they masked it so heavy, and they moved so much opium into the system through the pill. It's amazing how, when you look at the amount of pharmaceutical drugs that are moved through certain areas, where it was like almost everyone in the community had to take like 80,000 pills a person in order for that amount to be justified. It blows your mind, because they just flooded the U.S. market with psychotropic mood controllers and opiate-based painkillers. And so you have all these people that have been on those for a long time, but the problem is the side effects are killing them, and they need relief because they are in pain and they are having mental issues, be it from whatever. And cannabis is the substance that seems to really do a wonderful job with both of those issues. And so when they come into cannabis, it's a beautiful thing to see, because they bring the normalcy with them, because the more people that agree that cannabis is something that's not a negative, the easier it is for people who are into cannabis to be able to operate. And for me, being in medical cannabis, the thing that tripped me out was the number of people that I would deal with that would come to me too late to be able to really benefit from cannabis treatment. And I'd always ask them, like, why'd you wait so long? And they were like, because we were ashamed that we were going to have to come all the way, to deal with someone like you to get product to heal us. And I was running a successful dispensary, and I never took it personally. I understood what they meant. And I was just this symbol of a failed society, because I didn't follow conventional behavior. And that if you have to forsake all your belief to come talk to somebody who is not in that norm, it makes you question all your other validities. And I was always really gracious to these people, no matter how fucked up they were to me in that reform, because they were under such incredible stress, because somebody was dying. Somebody was dying close to them, and they didn't know what to do. And in desperation, right before the end, they reach out, and all you can do is try to be gracious and help them in any way you can. And I think that was some of the best stuff I ever did in my life, was to be somebody who helped people benefit from cannabis in a form when we really knew there was not going to be much benefit left. And it was about how you served and protected and tried to make feel almost like hospice. It made me understand like the value of hospice people, where they dignify the end of your life by allowing you to die with some grace. And to be able to, be part of that was an incredible gift. And cannabis allowed that to happen. But it's the same thing as all those individuals that need cannabis. They need to be able to access it when it's appropriate, not when they're at the very end of the desperation chain. And then for people who are feeling stressed out, little herb is nice, because you puff it and it goes away. If you're having hunger issues, you puff some herb and get some appetite. sleep issues, you can puff some herb and you can get some rest. If you feel some anxiety, you can puff some herb and calm you down. It allows you to use a substance that's been used 14,000 years in every form known without really any side effects. And some people have reactions to strong cannabis. High THC cannabis can really twist some people if they're not, mentally locked down. But for the most part, man, herb is this magic substance that just does all this crazy shit. And for us that are like, people have been in, your whole life, because you're only 6 years younger than me, you get to enjoy that transition with them, where you get to see people enjoy pot, you get to see them happy, and you start to see them question other aspects of your life. As soon as people start burning herb, I noticed that they hair, if they had hair, they grow it longer. If they didn't have a beard, they get a little beard. If they had regular, tight clothes, they go into looser shit. Like, they relax and become more who they want to be. And I love that, because it lets you see people for who they are. And, I think we need that. We've been put under this system that shapes your identity, but you can see it coming apart at the cracks right now. The whole fucking country's rioting over these structural constraints that are faulty, and you have to break them apart. And I think that, cannabis is one of the substances that allow that to happen. It lets people find that common.
So you kind of led me up to, through California to the dispensary there. What did you question your sanity there when you decided to go legal? Take the hustle to the next level, to a legal level, where you're thinking, what did you have a hard time convincing yourself and people around you that the legal aspect needed to happen when it did, to jump on board? Were there other people out there doing it, or were you like one of the
No,
first
I went
people
on my own on
to
that one.
jump on that?
Out of my whole squad, man, I was the only one that jumped. But what happened was, the funny thing was, I didn't jump out of desperation. I was probably having the best life I could have had at that moment. I would have been like 40. And so I'm 40, and I always tell stories like I had a new girlfriend. I'm with her still, but she was 20. So I got a beautiful 20-year-old girlfriend, and she's a sweetheart. And she and I have just had another baby a couple weeks ago. And so I'm still with her, all these years later. So she's not 20 anymore now. She's in mid-30s. But I was younger, and I had this really killer girl. And so I'm having this nice heart life. And then I was making money. And I'm growing herb, I'm running operations, we're moving herb, I got nursery operations, so there's plenty of cash rolling in, and I'm healthy, and my life is good. And I was sitting there in my house burning a joint on my couch, looking out into my backyard where I had another patch of grass growing. And I asked myself, what's the future going to look like, knowing what I knew? And I realized that, because 215 came in 96. And so this is almost like, 9 years later. And I saw the changes in the industry from 215. And I asked myself, where are we going to go once this transforms? Because I knew that it would. And I started looking at a timeline of, could I outrun it? Could I make enough money and put enough money away and build enough value in other businesses that would allow me to be able to last the rest of my life financially if I wasn't going to be able to be in cannabis sales? And I realized that probably not. It's tough to put 50 years of money away. And I said, any mistake at all, I'll screw myself. I said, so, all right, what do I do? So I started to think about, where's the opportunities? And I had been asked by this dispensary to do some consulting work for them for a long time. And I came in one time and I helped them out with some new genetics, and I laid out a propagation operation for them, and I kind of got them adjusted in what they were doing. And it worked out so well that they had offered me the position to run the facility. And I turned it down. I said, no, I'm good. I said, I just gave you some help because you all needed it. But I don't want to go have a 9-to-5 job, and I don't want to work in medical cannabis. That's not where I belong. And I realized that really was the only door to the future, was through medical cannabis. And so I took over that facility, and I had no idea what I was getting into because I didn't really understand medical cannabis. And it was amazing how when you get to be around people who are struggling and you're actually trying to help them, the humanity that occurs. And so for me, going into the dispensary end of it was extremely humanizing. And I took my skills into it, and we instantly, I took that facility and we blew it up financially. And then we took a #1 dispensary in Northern California 2 years in a row. So I didn't even know there was a competition. I just know that I came in, took it over. We won that first year. And someone said to me, I said to someone at an event, I said, hey, I didn't even know there was a fucking competition. And they said, oh, you got lucky and you won it out of luck. And I was like, oh, fuck you. I said, man, we worked hard to put that operation together. So we purposely tried to win it the second year, and we did. And so once you repeat, you're good. You don't got to chase any more goals. Like really, like you pull it twice in a row, you got a plan. And the focus there really was working with patients and working with the public on how do you keep cannabis moving in the way that it did prior, because legalization was looming. We knew we could see it in the horizon. 215 was medical defense. And so people didn't really understand how to operate in the new world, and the things that people were buying were changing. And so we were able to help farmers switch into products that worked, switch into increasing the quality of their products, helping individuals work on stabilizing their own medical needs through their own production operations. I put together all these neat little clusters of cultivators and medical people that would all work together collaboratively to generate product so that the cost was at the barest minimum so that everyone could afford it. It was just killer, man. I got to use all my skills trying to push a medical agenda in an area that was as cannabis as could be, but had a weird view on medical cannabis because it was so contrary to the hustler game of Humboldt County. And so people thought I had just fucking lost it. They were like, dude, like you gave up your life to go get a job at a dispensary? And I'm like, no, I'm building something of value and I know what I'm doing. And we became very successful at that facility. And I ended up picking up another operation that I took over completely as mine. And that's when we started the Wonderland Nursery op, which was really the first true nursery in the United States, where you could come into a facility and purchase the plants that were bought and created at that facility. So no other nursery existed that was a true licensed operation. There were collectives who sold to dispensaries. I was the dispensary who only sold plants. And it worked out beautifully. And we had a huge impact on the industry, where when the state came in and we were doing some work, they estimated that the impact on the industry might have been up to like 125, 150 million a year in impact. And so over the 5 years that we ran that operation, moving that quantity of stock, we might have influenced over $1 billion of cannabis production in the system. And so that's not bad to be able to say that you had $1 billion worth of influence in a model. And it was always about putting better pot into the system, better clonal material, better cultivation techniques, understanding how to place and move the product better, how to develop younger people. So we started, really for years, I always tried to develop younger people around me and highlight their work so that they would be able to move forward past us. And that habit of doing it, I brought that into the dispensaries, and we started building all these seed people, where we were the first store to carry their seeds. We were the first ones to use their stock in a production model so that the mainstream could experience the product. And so it was great because you get to develop young talent and you get to give them the credit so they benefit from it. And so you become like a success incubator. And that's really how I see all that time, was that I would have stayed with what I was doing because I couldn't have been any happier. I had a beautiful new girlfriend. I had a beautiful life. I had plenty of time. At the time I had my son, who was probably like 14 years ago, he was 11. So I had an 11-year-old, and he and I used to travel around the world together. I used to take my son with me traveling around the fucking globe. So, I mean, I'm having this really killer life that I didn't have as a young dude. And I just knew that the game was going to change so dramatically that if I didn't move intelligently, I would just be wiped out in the future. And then I knew that I didn't belong in the mainstream, where I know that I can integrate into any situation pretty much. And I have a really diverse skill set inside me. My innate skills are there, but that's not where I like to be. And so I knew I was going to be fucking miserable if I wasn't growing herb, selling herb, propagating herb, being around herb. And I just knew the only way through to the destination was through that door. And holy fuck, I just didn't realize how incredibly emotionally tough it was to deal with so many people who were struggling so badly medically. Like, because they're in your everyday life, people don't reveal all their problems to you. Some people do, that all they do is fucking complain. But most people hold that shit inside, and they come to you and they're always ashamed that they're faulty, that they're struggling, that something's wrong. And so when you make people comfortable, they'll confide. And when you hear the story and see the truth of it, you're just like, holy shit. And it makes you understand why doctors are all fucked up, why nurses are all fucked up, first responders. Because when you're around constant pain that you can't heal or fix, there's nothing you can do. All you can really do is be compassionate. It takes from you, but you get so much more back in a different way. You know, that's the thing, is I never expected the medical influence on me. That's the thing that was so profound, was all the work we did. And then remember, I ran all those CBD programs where we put a couple $1 million worth of clones into the market for free. So, I mean, I gave away millions of dollars worth of plants for free. Like, I never sold a CBD product the entire time I was in the industry. And the AC/DC cut, that Cannatonic, was bred in my shop. So I was involved in the very inception of cannabis. There's only a couple of us at that time period that were moving it. And I moved millions of dollars of plants for free into the market that I subsidized from the rest of my business, so that people could get access to the medicine that they needed. And it was so funny, because I'm not someone who's all caught up in medicine. When people ask me, you know, like, were you a medical grower? I'm like, no, I was a fucking dope grower. I didn't do anything medical until I got into the dispensary. I had a 215, but I never claimed that I was a medical grower, because I wasn't doing medical shit. I was growing herb, trafficking herb, building operations. It was when I got into the system that I really understood with, you know, that this whole medical relationship and how intimate it is. It's heavy, man, but it changed my life in that way. It made me feel like I was part of humanity in a way I never did.
So when was tell me about the importance, when you realized the importance of collecting strains, that you know, there was different types out there, and you needed to start collecting them or librarying them. When exactly was that point that you were like, fuck, man, I gotta start, you know, putting together a library of this stuff and keeping as much as I can? I mean, Wonderland is exactly that. I mean, what
Yeah,
you house over there in strains is appropriately named. I can't imagine all the
you
different
know how we got the
type
name
of
Wonderland?
varietals you have there.
Do you know
No,
how
how'd
we
you come
got the
up with the
name?
name?
My lawyer came up with the name. I went to visit my lawyer, and he said, I have the name for your business. He said, Wonderland. He said, because I've always wondered how the fuck you didn't land in federal prison. And so Wonderland was a play on that phrase, right? But that really was where it came from, that he wondered how I didn't land in federal prison. So I learned about banking stock from being a kid, because all the heads in the neighborhood, all the gangsters, they always collected the best seed out of the best bales. And so the first varieties I got to work with was seed stock we had collected that had come out of really killer shipments. And so all these heads had, you know, containers of grass from the best shipments. They had seeds from the best shipments. And so I knew that there was varying levels of qualities from the very beginning. And then when I got to California, I got lucky in that I got to meet people right away that were in the game and got access to stock quickly. And I've been fortunate my whole career, where I've always tried to bring value to a relationship, and I don't ask people for stuff. It's best if you allow people to be nice to you because they choose to, not because you're being strategic. And that behavioral pattern is in some crazy fucking way resulted in me getting my hands on so much plant material over the course of my life, I can't even begin to count it. Because people want to share, they just don't want to share with people who are being sneaky. And so I was able to access tremendous amounts of material. But what I did is I gave out, way more material. So anything I found or acquired that was phenomenal, that didn't have some kind of restriction placed on it, I would give it to regular people. And so when I tell people, if you want to be a collector, you're every now and then you're going to help someone out who you wish you kind of didn't help because they're kind of pricks once they get the value. But 95% of the time, you're going to do the right thing and you'll meet the right people. And a 95 is a grade in life isn't bad. So I just figure out of the 100 people I fuck with, if 5 of them suck, the 95 of them makes it worth it. And what it does is it allows you to be able to constantly feed the system with genetics and share genetics to people that you think would benefit from them when you're able. And if people are polite, and you say this a lot, but polite is like you got some fucking courtesy, some respect. It just shows who you are. And when people approach you in that way and they're thoughtful, you'd like to see them do well. And when you give things that are extremely valuable that people can't get and you give them freely, you're reaffirming their faith in humanity. And 15 years down the road, they come across something that you've been searching for 25 years. And they call you on the phone and let you know, bro, I'm in Texas and I found that fucking plant and I smoked it and it's there. And you're so happy. And they're like, it gets better. I got a copy and I'm bringing it to you. And then you're dancing around the house because you're able to acquire material that's priceless. And you're not having to solicit. It's happening because it's in the chain of custody of cool deeds, to where you've been good to each other for long enough time to where it's constantly flowing. And so because of that, it lets you access all the weird shit in the system that doesn't come out of a fucking seed pack. So seed pack stuff's excellent, but the anomaly pollinations, the stuff that people had happen as a freak that went off, they had something hermaphrodite that pollinated something. That's pretty much the basis of every super strain that we have today. We're going to call them super cultivars, really, is accidental pollinations in the hands of nobodies. And so nobody's built cannabis. And that's what I love about that part of it, is that there is no somebody's. The somebody's create stuff that people can work with and they get banks and bodies of material. But it's little cultivators that have a closet that pop out something incredible. And when they smoke it with you, you go, holy shit, that's unreal. That's what I like. That's what I like acquiring more than anything, is just stuff that's just fucking straight fire, where I don't care whose name was on it. I don't care if you even know what it was made of, because we can DNA it and see what it's related to, if there's any common, genetic lineage. But main point is good grass is good grass. And that's what you want to collect. You want to collect stuff that's stellar. I collect things that work in really fucked up environments. I collect things that have really exceptional highs. I work on things that have extremely defined flowering times, things that fit almost like a toolbox, where in the toolbox you have all these different tools to fit the need of the mechanic. The cannabis plant fits the need of the cultivator. And then if you can match that right plant with the right chemotyping, the right chemical composition, oh, you got magic. And every now and then you'll catch that. You'll get something that works for you as a cultivator in your situation, and the quality of the finished product is stunning. Like, that's the shit that I really like. Those are the ones that you hold forever. And all my stock now is banked. Or I have all of my personal stock. Everything that's in the library is in vitro, in a lab. So I have it all held in vitro. So I had everything meristem scrubbed and in vitro and cataloged and laid out, so that I don't have to worry about any problems with holding material anymore. And so when I get new material, I can re-enter it into the system. I can have the lab clean it. I can have the lab hold it. And then it gets held in an in vitro storage. And then once every 45, 50 days, they'll pull new material from that container and then repropagate it, so that you're always recycling your propagation, but it's held in a laboratory, in a bank. And it's nice. I only hold a couple of plants in my own life, the ones I want to grow outside at my house. Everything I grow from my farm I have come from the nurseries, and I own a nursery, but also I can get it from other nurseries through license to license transfer, so that I don't have to hold the material in the same way. And then my nursery only serves one client. So I used to be a nursery where the public could come in and get stock. Now I'm a nursery where I provide the stock to all the member farmers for a specific company. And it works really well as a business model. And I miss a lot of the customer to customer dealings because I enjoyed that so much. But with legal cannabis, you know, man, it is a meat grinder of an industry. And so you have to make moves that are smart, that allow you to keep your workers employed, that allow you to keep the business moving. And we went to that model, and it's been really good for us. And it's good for the group too, because it puts them into a cluster of guys that want to, you know, do good work.
So is the Wonderland model something that will never be around again, where you know, the average Joe will be able to walk in and pick up an elite cut of something that they've only dreamed about?
No,
Or
I don't think that. I don't think that it's the end of it. It's just that the legalization, you know, it's funny because the gene trafficking is more prevalent than it's ever been. So really, like, the best elite cuts are floating around on the internet, where people are moving cuts all over the place. It's just trying to verify it to make sure it's the right one, because everybody gets fucking sneaky about a hot cut. Wonderland was nice, where you could go get something that was super elite and pay $10. So like, I would sell clones that were, you know, you pay 5,000 for it. If you come into my store, you get it $10. And I love that shit, because regular people deserve good grass. It's not a cultural elite that deserves good pot. It's just good people. And so I made sure that the stuff that was the hottest shit on the market, so I could get my hands on it. And I always cleared it with the people that were developing it too. So like, some things, you know, I'd get a cut from somebody and they say, look, just give me a year and then you can open source release it. But I need a year with this plan in my own operation, so I can make the money, but then put it into the world. And as long as you follow the rules of the trade, it's okay. So stuff that I created myself, I can do what I choose, and things that I acquire on the open market, I can do what I choose. But if I got it from you and you said, hey, I want you to put this into the system, I'll put it into the system. If you tell me I want you to wait a year, I wait a year. If you tell me never put it into the system, just use it in breeding operations and stuff like that, because you just, for some reason, don't want that plant moved, I listen to you because you're the one giving it to me. So you can kind of guide what I'm going to do with the plant. And if it's too fucking restrictive, then I just say, keep it. It's not worth it. But otherwise, you know, it's been really valuable because it lets us all have this commonality. And so I think that once legalization straightens out a bunch of its bullshit, which it will, you'll start to be able to see nurseries that are feeding dispensaries, but they're feeding them killer shit. And you'll be able to find out, you know, hey, how do I get an order in on that? How do I contact the nursery to get an order on a plant that I can then pick up through a dispensary, because you have to go through a storefront to buy it, right? That was the difference, is that, you know, we were powerhouse in the genetic game, but you could actually access us. You could come and speak to me in my office. I mean, we couldn't have been any more open to access than we were, because we wanted to serve in that capacity. And with a lot of the newer operations, it's a business model. And so people are concerned about the business model. They don't really understand that the nursery kind of launches the whole industry, that it's from the plant forward the industry begins. And the way that you get new participants, the way you get new appreciation, is to allow people to touch killer cannabis themselves and go home and grow their own 2 lights of it. And then they go, holy shit, this is unbelievable. And it'll change their world. And that's the part that I liked about the Wonderland model. And I think it'll happen again. It's just that right now it's so fucking hard to make money in cannabis with the way the regulatory system lays out, that the overhead is so great. You get taxed on this shit like it's going out of control, that it makes it where the only people that are in cannabis that can succeed are people that are doing really hard edge business. And why would they ever give you the best shit? Like, I have people tell me all the time that I was stupid, that I was like, you're pushing all this good material into the system and you should be hoarding it. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing hoarding it? It doesn't do anything sitting in your library. what it does is it does incredible good when you get it into the system. So people can cultivate it, they can get other people who want to consume it. And what you're doing is you're creating markets. Most of these cats coming in right now into the system, they don't understand that. They think they're going to take over a market. I'm not trying to take over a market. I'm trying to develop a market. I'm coming at it from a radically different perspective. I'm trying to feed the market with things that are exceptional so that anyone who touches those things can succeed versus I'm the only one who's succeeding. And I think that's the beauty of all of us that were from the past in the game is that we were all paid. We all had plenty of money. Like everybody's running around like they got cash right now. We're all laughing. We're like, we're fucking drug dealers. You guys are broke, really. And they think the money is everything, and it's not. The money is just a tool that you use to live and survive, and it helps fund your operations. But it's the connection with the people that's the juice. It's the fact that people will listen to you and trust you, and that you can have people that you trust and listen to. That's the juice. And it's when you squeeze the cultivar, the plant itself, is when that juice flows out. And so that'll happen again as we move forward, and the money becomes a little less important because there's more money to be made. And you'll start to see the models of people who once again feature ultra high level cultivars released into the general public. It has to happen. All things go in circles. It went from it was as cool as it could be with under 215 in the storefront model to as fucked up as it can be with legalization. And it'll rotate out again once they realize this is ineffective. So just hold on, man, because all that shit's there. The plant's a bank, like the genetic development, breeders aren't stopping. There's more work being done right now than there's ever been done in the history of cannabis. Everybody's got a seed company. Everybody's doing R&D. The genomic companies are in full play, working on refinement, which is incredible because you're going to be able to start to get plants from them that you can use in breeding projects that'll breed true. So you'll be able to bounce cultivars that you pick up against the known male that throws known traits. So you'll be able to start to dial in your own projects to fit your needs, which is really what it's about as a grower, is to fine tune your process by optimizing all the things under your control. And I mean, so the genetics game hasn't even begun. We don't even, people have no idea. They think cannabis is done. And I'm like, you have no idea. It's just about the launch. And the number of people that want to play with cannabis, grow it, touch it is just supernatural. So yeah, I think I have high hopes for a better future. Right now it's a transition. We went from just killing it to getting killed to we would kill it again. And that way the mainstream people that aren't in, hustle cannabis can access really good material. So when they grow the herb in their backyard and they smoke it, they grow it in their basement, they grow it at their mom's house because mom's got a nice garden in the backyard. That gives them enough grass to smoke for a year. I love that. And I own a storefront, but I would much rather have you, because people are always going to buy from a store, but I would rather have as many people as possible grow their own products so that they have that freedom. The ability to grow your own herbs so you're not dependent on the price of pot changes incredibly on how you utilize it. You feel so much better when you roll a joint and you don't have to go, ooh, I only have $7 left of weed to smoke this week. I have to be careful. You're like, I got 3 more fucking pounds of it sitting here. You're just smoking the shit out of it if you want. That's a privilege. And only people who've had weight know that privilege. And it's a gift. And that's the gift that I really wanted to see people have was this is how you grow enough grass to satisfy your needs. And this is the right shit to grow.
I believe the thing that made Wonderland and what most growers appreciated about it was if you were able to get there and get in and get a cut of whatever, you could go home knowing that it was a good, healthy cut of whatever in the hell it was supposed to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
what it was labeled was what you got. You didn't have to go home, grow it out, and then, second guess it almost the entire plant, the life of the plant, hit it, rolling it up with your buddies. Do you think that that's really the sour diesel there? I mean, it tastes close, but when you got a clone from Wonderland, you knew exactly what was on the tag was what the hell you got. And you mentioned seeds out here. I mean, even with that, I mean, there's so many pollen being chucked out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. but I think there's a lot of watering down and a lot of you don't exactly know what the hell you're getting until you grow it out and have it tested. I don't even think a lot of the breeders anymore are confident in knowing 100% what they've got before they've crossed it. I think they're just like they pop something, found a good pheno, and that's their next step. They're already breeding with it without running it a few times and actually seeing what it's capable and the characteristics of it. Then it's just oh, this looks good. Throw some pollen on it, and then it's out there being sold already, which is sad because it's ultimately kind of it's nice to see all these strains, and if they were being tested, I would think we're getting somewhere because there'd be little markers here and there you could go back to, but that's not going on, man. It's just like just seeds, 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 and it's just getting. So I think at some point we just might end up with a gray area in cannabis where it's been so blended. If we don't, there's not people like yourself that are taking time to make sure things are done right and cuts are held in the correct way.
Well, kind of, like there's lots of us that hold material for time. So, there's people all over the world that are bankers. I call them librarians. But when you want to have something come out phenomenal, you have to have participation, so that the more people that are involved, the greater the chance are of something supernatural happening. And you're looking at the evolution. So right now everybody's working their components, but you'll start to see people being able to go back to working their own line, and they'll be able to start taking their time and then developing something for them specifically. And so I think that what you see now is whatever's trendy on the internet instantly becomes the cultivar du jour. So if it was Triangle Kush, it's in every hybrid. If it's Purple Punch, it's in every hybrid. If it's a Skittle, it's in every hybrid. They put it into everything because it has a value. All those three plants have values. That the purple has a visual and a morphology that's phenomenal. And the TK is just some fire ass OG progenitor. And Skittle adds a flavor component that's just exquisite when you lay it into a hybrid. So there's a reason why they're there. It's just that you just see a concentration and they jump out and then it goes away. But that's how it always is with trends. And so what you have to do is you got to get more participation. And then people can start to slowly work the directions they want to where you have something that's pretty stable in terms of its breeding, so that when you do breed their line, you get a pretty even distribution. And I have stock like that. I got some good stock out of Utah from a cat that is a good breeder out there, Party Gear. And he had like a 14th generation hash plant out of like Utah up in the mountains that I got seed from him. This shit was identical. I'm talking like a stable, rock solid, stable, good hash plant. And so it's there. And the thing that people got to remember too is that science hasn't been involved with cannabis in the way that was good for us. They use science to manipulate data so that it would show that cannabis did all this bad shit. But now that we're past that, you can start to use science to look into these things, and you start to have labs so you can take a look at what the chemotype is and kind of understand where the direction goes. And you can start to take a look at markers in the plant and figure out what's the parental differences within it. So you can start in breeding projects to pull out certain things. So you can cleanse a line, refine a line, and all that's happening. That's all happening right now. So I don't worry about the gene pool getting muddled up. As much as I'm grateful that people are breeding as much as they can and selling as much seed as they can and selling as many clones as they can, because that means that you're getting participation. I would rather have a bunch of jumbled shit that we have to unsort with massive participation than a couple of plants that were perfect with only 3 of us smoking them. Because we need the population involved in cannabis to overturn the stigma and to start to be able to get it in a form where they don't regulate it like it's plutonium. You still got people in prison doing life for weed. Fucking life. for weed. I mean, you got companies making, they're intending to make billions on it, and you still get innocent dudes in the joint. Innocent where they sold some grass. I mean, like, holy fuck, that's a 50-year sentence. I mean, that's incredible. That's the thing. You got to get more people involved, and so that there's an uproar of this shit's not fair. And so to me, I'll take the genetic jumbling because I know we can unsort it. What I need is more people holding plants, touching plants, growing plants, smoking plants, and not judging people who do that, to where pretty soon they realize, hey, my grandmother smokes, I'm not judging anybody anymore about this shit. Like, that to me is more important, because we can work out the jumble. Science can help us see inside. And then if you just spent the next 14 years selectively breeding something that fit your exact situation, you'd have something to fit your situation. And you'd find out where you went down the wrong road. You'd find out which male didn't do well. You'd remember which male did, because you'd have all your breeding journals. So conventional tech works just fine. You just have to take your time. And we just got to get more participants. More pollen chuckers is never bad. People use it as like a derogatory phrase, just like closet grower or tent grower. People are fucking aggressive on that, but I'm like, who cares where you do it? It's inside you. You as a cultivator, it's not about scope. It's about intent. And if your intention is to do the best job you can, and you only grow one plant, you're a cultivator. And if your intent to grow 10 million plants and you fuck it up, you're not a cultivator. You know what I'm saying? More isn't better. Better is better. And if you could do more better, you're badass. But better is better than more.
I'm just afraid that you talked about the marketplace and what has value. I'm just afraid the marketplace and the consumers is going to try to lock us down into a cookie, Gorilla Glue, or GG4 type marketplace, and the value won't lie with it'll lie with the consumer instead of the breeders. That's where it really should lie. I mean, that's where the work's being done. And I'm just afraid that it'll get weaned down with a bigger marketplace, and instead of, being, more bred out, like you're saying, the possibilities here are endless. And I'm just afraid that the marketplace will kind of hinder that search that could be endless, really.
The marketplace drives it, though. You remember that the breeder does, just like someone said, the buyer doesn't set the price. Oh, fuck yeah, they do. Because if they need the product, they'll pay more. And if they don't need the product, they'll pay less. So you can't tell them it's this if it doesn't fit reality, right? So you need the market to have their desires. And what you do is you don't look at it in a bad way. You look at it like, okay, what do people like? And so Gorilla Glue is same thing. Gorilla Glue done well is damn nice. And it wouldn't be so popular if it was bunk. Why are people buying it? Like, that's my point, is that these aren't bad. That doesn't mean it's the most exquisite thing you've ever seen in your life. But for some people, it is. For some people, they love a good Gorilla Glue, and that is their preferential smoke. And when you do that correctly, it couldn't be any prettier, couldn't have a better, richer smell, good full in the mouth. And for certain individuals, they love the chemotype. And so it just holds true. And same thing with cookie. The straight, because I have the original Girl Scout cookie, the one that came out that very first batch of cookie that popped out. I got one. And it couldn't be a nicer cookie. The shit shines. And when you smoke it to this day, it's a good, earthy, rich cookie dough smoke. So it's not about the market is going to damage us. It's that we need a bigger market so that you can start to find a reason to breed all the other weird shit. Because I like long flowering sativas. And even though we're going to call it sativa here, but really we're going to call it, narrow leaf drug cultivar. I like those electric highs. But there are 100 days to get them to go off, and they're deep November, early December outdoor, so they're tough to run. And there's certain people in the market that'll pay for it, just not everybody. But when you have a bigger market, there's enough people to justify a farmer growing it. So as the market expands, you'll have your Gorilla Glue market, you'll have your cookie market, but you'll also have all these weird freak niche markets that'll open up the opportunity for smaller cultivators to catch that market because it won't fit a commercial frame. The thing is that if you're running any of these commercial varieties that are heavy yielders and things that we used to call them craft. We used to call them craft when we grew them, but when they went to these mega facilities, they became commercial. The main point is the market wants those things, let those companies grow it. You figure out where your opportunity is and what you should grow and who you're trying to sell it to. And that's where you specialize. And what it does, it lets you get out of the loop of I just commercially cultivate, but you go back to cultivate and shit you really like. So that this way you feel good as a cultivator. And you don't have to as a farmer. A farmer can grow pot and not love the pot they grow. They just have to love growing pot, because you can grow 6 plants in your yard that let you smoke enough grass every day for a year to be happy with your personal choices. But the market dictates a reality, but a bigger market gives you more fringes to touch all the interesting exotic shit. So you got to have commercial in order to define craft, because they're comparatives. So you can't have craft if you don't have commercial. It exists. Once we define a thing, we can't rip it into one piece. There's another piece left. Craft and commercial form the bookends. Everything is in the middle. And so it depends on where you want to be within it. And that to me is developing. And so I used to fear that too. I used to have the same fears that they're going to swag us out. We're going to produce 1 billion pounds of salt grown dope, and we're not going to be able to get any. And the truth of it all is that the market that wants that will buy it, and the ones that don't. And if there's enough people who don't want that, then there'll be producers who specialize in those things. And I don't think that we're there quite yet. We're in the infancy of the industry, and that the way it used to be was just so comfortable for so many people that they hate the new system. They can't, and I don't blame them. The prices are just high, but the prices are high across the board for us as producers. So it isn't like we're jacking you and getting paid. I mean, holy shit, the overhead is savage on legal cannabis. And so nobody's benefiting the way you'd like. The producers are getting fucked. The customer gets fucked. And that's why, I'm always trying to give people home grow information, conceptual shit, so they can go and do their own thing, so they can kind of get out of the loop until cannabis normalizes again to where you can go to a dispensary and get a sack of herb that's killer for a fair price. And then every now and then you buy something that's Epicurean for a high price. But when you pay that money for that product, you're happy with it. It's like a Kobe beef sandwich, where like they're expensive and I don't eat them all the time, but every now and then, boy, a mouthful of Kobe beef is pretty damn good. You can't believe it's steak, because it's just so fucking greasy and perfect, but very expensive. So once in a blue moon, I'll have a piece of Kobe meat, but most of the time it's just regular steak. And actually, I eat more vegetables now than I eat meat. So it's even a longer stretch in between them. But you catch my point, that you have to have both, and that people shouldn't fear this change, because the more you drive something to one direction, the more the other side has to balance out. The pendulum swings continuously. It's never held in stasis. And so we need to let this happen. And then you allow individuals to enjoy grass. And if you and 5 of your neighbors are all into smoking, and you're all smoking different shit, you all get to mess around. And every now and then, but usually like once a year, one of you will find something phenomenal in the hunt, and you share it with your squad. And then you're just swimming in good grass. That's what I'm lucky, is that everybody I hang out with is mostly into weed. Well, not everybody, but most fucking everybody. And so it's never ending new shit coming through the pipeline. Every time I turn around, someone's got something that they bred, created, found, hunted, developed. And so it's this never ending wave of newness. And it lets you always experience stuff that's, on the trends and on the fringes of what's possible. And then you still like the stuff that you like. My favorite smoke is an LA Pure Kush. It's a heavy, earthy, coffee, chocolatey, make you sweat. You get so high when you puff it. Like, that's my favorite herb. Now, it's not a heavy producer, and it's PM prone in moist environments, so it's not good to grow in certain situations, but it does well for me here in Soham. But the quality of it's excellent. And if I had to get dropped on an island with only one cut, it'd be that cut. Unless I was in the tropics, then I'd have to take something that worked. But if I wasn't in the tropics If I could be put into an area that the latitude was conducive to that type of hash plant, I would smoke that shit every day because I never get tired of smoking it. I never get tired of the mouth, and I never get resistant to the high. I don't give a shit how much I smoke. If you smoke a joint, you smoking 10 joints today, you wake up tomorrow morning and burn one, you fired up. So, you know, there's things that I dig for myself that are just my favorites. And then there's stuff that's all the new stuff we get to try out and test and examine, explore. Like, that's what's really interesting. All the millions of combinations. It's unlimited. And the more people that play, the better, because it keeps creating tolerance, and it creates the excitement. And out of these new generation people coming in, these younger guys and girls coming in, they're going to do stuff that we never could because they don't have the stigma we did. They were never exposed to cannabis in a negative way. They went to college and got a degree in cannabis horticulture specifically. Like, all that shit's happening right now. Imagine what they'll do as we go forward because their mind isn't held up on drug war bullshit. You know, that's always been the dream, is to get the fucking bullshit out of the system so that people can shine and you can get creativity that's nonstop. So that this way we don't lose the craft, we don't lose the culture. It'll just constantly evolve. But the root of it, the appreciation for cannabis and the appreciation for each other, remains.
I've heard the word come up a couple of times, the word craft. And at one point you said this is what it used to be considered, and things are changing quite rapidly. So with the money being just thrown at the cannabis plant, how do you see craft being defined in the future? What will it take for it to be considered a craft cannabis?
I think ultimately craft cannabis is defined by the customer. People like to define themselves as craft, and some people are accurate with that, and then some people are not. And so what you hear a lot now on the big level is, you know, craft at scale. And I'm like, they're fucking oxymorons. They can't go together. Craft is about attention to detail, and it's about choosing things that aren't necessarily easy to cultivate or convenient to cultivate, that require a higher level of work inherently to produce it. That desire to work with the things that aren't simple, the things that are complex, because ultimately you want to give the customer something that's complex. That's craft. It's about diving deep into the art of the job and working with the fringes, working with the things that most won't work with, and having people who purchase it. So just because you do all that and no one wants to buy it, you're working in a craft methodology, but you're not able to identify customers and tie into them. Once you get a customer base that likes your product and appreciates your attention to detail, you're a craft operator. And if you're just growing it for yourself and you're putting your attention in, you're a craftsman, because you're working on something with care and attention to detail. And I look at it like a trade. I always have. I look at it like it's a trade, and you come into a trade and you're an apprentice, and you get to touch the tools and work on the stuff, but under supervision. And then you get enough practice and experience to become a journeyman, and they can leave you alone on a job. And then once you get qualified as a journeyman and you elevate your skill level, you become a master. And a master means you can run a project. It means that you can look at a project and set up a project and manage journeymen who manage apprentices. So, there's this evolution. And so once you are a good, competent operator in any craft, you're a master, right? Just they put the word on it like it's some kind of fucking Jedi shit. And I'm like, no, it's traditional trades words. So don't overemphasize it, but don't underemphasize it, because there's a value to it. It just says you're competent. And so now you could be a master operator, but you're a master at what specific? And so you could be a master at craft operations, or you're a master at commercial operations, and they're different. But both of them are masters because they're doing the best that can be done under those constraints. And so for me, the craft of cannabis is the care and appreciation so that the end product is best. And it's not just about, does it look best in the bag? If that's important, that's important. But ultimately, will the consumer buy it twice if they have choices? Where if you had the opportunity to consume whatever you wanted, would you buy that shit twice? And if you'll buy it twice, if you'll spend money 2 times in a row for the product, you know that you caught their attention. They bought it the first time, you might have got them on some good advertising. But they come in and they have choices and they buy it again, you did something right. And that has to be recognized. And if it's commercial, it means that you did it well enough to make the price point cheap enough and the quality high enough to make it an attraction. Or if it's true craft, it's such an exquisite delivery that there's no question in your mind that it's Epicurean pot, where you're like, every bit of it's an experience, from the smell of it, the touch of it, the way it smokes, the quality, the high, the residual in the mouth. When it checks every box, you're like, holy shit, that's not an accident. That's a lot of care, because the variety alone doesn't do all of that. The operator and the variety combined create the experience. And that's craft to me. It's that you care, that you really give a fuck about what you're doing, and you're honest about it. You don't get caught up in your own hype. So it's okay to say that you're growing this variety because it makes you money and you're doing a great job. It's just not as good as your buddy's variety, because his takes 3 more weeks and gives it half, but it's better grass. And when we smoke them side by side, you can't deny it. You just have to be honest. All right, man, I'm making money and you're growing better pot. There's no hate.
You were one of the first people to anticipate the hydrocarbon extraction side of things coming on. Did that market exceed what you seen coming at that point? I mean, it's huge these days. I mean, at some point, do you wish that you would have kind of weighed a little bit heavier on that side of the pendulum?
No, I'm totally good with what I did on that, because that's not me. I knew it was. I had taken a look at, when I first got the first time I saw extract like in BHO form. It was still back in the day when people were blowing that out of PVC tubes and using double boilers to boil it off on their ovens. Right, we're talking about fucking 2002. 2002 was the first time I saw people blowing gas, right? And I wouldn't screw with it, because I'm like, there's no way that shit's clean. So I know that you're getting high as a kite, but I'm telling you, there's no way that shit's clean. And we know now it wasn't. So I didn't smoke a lot of that stuff. I mean, every now and then I take a puff of it, but I'm like, I'm good, man. I know that stuff is toxic. And when I got to experience it in a refined form, I got so high that it made my leg like uncontrollably shake. And as I watched my leg shaking on the ground, I was like, wow, is it only me? And I looked around the room, and everyone in the room had like a shaking limb or was up against the wall. And I realized that we were all heavy smokers, and we had gone to another level, that extraction was the next step. And we were there, and I said, holy shit. And so I started really moving oil through the storefronts. And we were the first ones to move it in any quantity like that. And it was an incredible experience to be part of the wave of oil. But it's trippy, because I quit smoking pot for probably 5-6 years and only smoked oil. I was so happy smoking oil that I quit smoking flower, because it was almost like smoking a cigarette. I got no effect. Flavors weren't right. It just wasn't there. And then one day I consumed some oil, and it made me feel like unhappy. And it was such an odd feeling from being high that I was like, whoa. And I realized I'd like saturated, that I had gone so deep into the oil that it was almost like my receptors were saturated, and it was no longer the right product. And so I let my system clean out for a week or two, and I went back to flower, because flower had always been, my base. And I haven't really smoked any BHO since. And so I'll take a tiny puff here or there, and I'll hit some solventless every now and then too. But I went back to full flower for me, because it was just a more balanced experience. But for the extraction end of it, it has to be with what you're into. And I never wanted to work in a lab. And so I knew what fractal distillation looked like. I knew what fractal distillation looked like in form, but I am somebody that doesn't want to spend every moment of their day in a laboratory doing fractal distillation. That's part of the, the thing with me as a cultivator is I like growing pot outside. And so even though I have, operations that run in indoor and greenhouse, systems, my truest desire is to grow dope outdoor. And so to develop a business model where indoor in a lab is about as polar opposite of me as what I want. So I don't regret not going further with it at all. I made the most of the situation when it was there. We formed the oil cartel. So we became the Humboldt Oil Cartel, where we did all the, movement of oil through the region. And it was some really killer shit. But I'm happy with my choices, man. I like nursery operations. I love cultivation. Storefront's interesting because you get to meet customers and you get to meet people and talk to them and just hopefully be of service so that, as you move forward, what your impact on the game is genuine. So if you're doing it just for the cake, I don't fault it, but you can't go as deep. You can only go as deep it's really about it. You know what I mean? And so for me, the extraction is interesting and I'm fascinated with the science, but it's not what I want to do. It's not where I want to spend my time. And so I knew that if I got into it, I would hire scientists to do the work and I would just own an operation. And I just said, I'm good, because I knew that once we got into real legal, once you start to have real industry coming in, fractal distillation is a thing that is scalable. And so imagine if one of the petroleum companies decided they wanted to be part of cannabis. You don't think they understand how to fucking separate hydrocarbons? That's what they do. So, I realized that I would never be able to get high enough up a competitive ladder in that field to be competitive for long term, and so that it would be something that you built and sold. And I didn't want to get out of cannabis. I wasn't trying to build things and sell them. I don't mind building an operation and selling the operation, but for me, the last thing I want to do is retire from weed. I want to grow pot on my farm until I'm fucking dead. I want them to bury me up there. I mean, like, for real. So you got to kind of, for young cats coming in, you got to kind of figure out what you want, and you have to be intelligent about those choices, because ultimately it's your happiness in what you do that is really what you're carrying with you every day. So if you're digging what you're doing, all of a sudden you blink and you spent 20, 30, 40 years in a job and you don't even know it because you liked it. And that's a gift. You don't know how much time you're going to have. And if you're going to invest so much time in business and work to do all this shit, you better like it. You better enjoy something. And so you got to be able to find, where do you have enough enjoyment to keep your motivation high and to keep your interest peaked, so that you're always looking for the little things that you wouldn't normally see if you weren't paying attention, because it's within those details that the magic, the beauty comes out, the mystery, the complexity of the system around you. The more you know, you don't know shit.
That's a very, very true statement too. I had one question in chat from the American one. Can you tell us a little bit about your hunt for the true skunk there? Are you getting any closer to getting back to that branch that was left on your front porch or on your porch there? Is that something that we may ever be able to smoke again?
Yeah, we at some point, I know we will. But I talked about this the other day when I was speaking to someone. I got really ill a couple of years ago, right? Who fuck knows how it happened, but I went septic in my neck. I got an infection in my neck overnight, and no one knows how it happened, but it almost killed me. And I ended up getting rushed into the hospital for emergency surgery, and I was in a coma for a couple of days, and I thought I was going to fucking die at the hospital. So I woke up and my whole family was around me, and I was like, "What are y'all doing here?" And they were all like, "Well, they told us you were going to die, so we all came in to say goodbye to you." And I was laughing because I said, "No, I feel pretty good." But really, I felt good because I was on so much fucking fentanyl in the ICU, and I was pissing in a tube, and I got fucking ventilators, and I'm like, "Hey, I feel great." But you feel great because you're drugged out of your mind. So I get out of the ICU, and this was 2 years ago, March. And so the project was underway when that happened. And I thought I was going to get to go right back to work and go back to working on all my projects. But man, for the first time in my adult life, I was weak. I was not strong. And I wasn't even as mentally sharp. It was almost like I was just slow. And I knew that at that moment that I was feeling the weight of that near death experience. And I had to put the project down for a second just so I could, work on my life. And when I get ready to relight up the project, because I had gathered some incredible shit, man, I got stock from all over the fucking place from back from the 70s forward. So I had this incredible bank of material that I was going to open up and start to look through. And by the time I become healthy again, to where like I have the energy to go do this, I'm now tied into a different nursery model, and I don't have the space to run all my R&D shit. And so what I did is I hooked up with some partners of mine that have a very large operation, and I licensed all the material to them so that I own it, but it's in their hold. And we're going to start going through it there to start doing the digging on it, to start mining out all that cool shit from that era. But it was, for me, though, it wasn't about like, I want to get it to market first so I could be the first one to sell the shit. It was really because I realized that I kind of wanted to reminisce about those days when I was in my 20s. And it wasn't like I wanted to be 20 because I'm happy being in my 50s, but I wanted to go and smoke pot from that era. And it was pot from like this really nice time in my life. And I wanted to have the skunks, but I wanted to have also all the other exotics that came out of those skunk lines. There was so much interesting shit at that time period that was all woven into those basic foundation blocks. And I knew that if we went through a big enough population, we would pull out some really beautiful material. And then, like I said, once the illness fucking grabbed me, I just didn't expect it to take me out for so long. I mean, it's funny, I had never been ill in my entire life, and I woke up in the morning and my tongue was hanging out of my mouth. I mean, literally hanging out of my mouth. And I said, what the fuck is wrong? So I go to the hospital, and they start panicking. They rush me to another hospital for emergency surgery. And I'm watching everybody freak out, and I'm like, oh, this shit isn't going well. And I ended up surviving it, but it stole some time from me that didn't let me work on that project when I had the ability to at my old facility. And the new facility is tied up with commercial business. And so I don't have the same resources to play the game that I did. And I was even going to do a lot of the developmental work at my farm. But the thing is that when you're paying the cost of the permits for the farm and how much you pay per square foot and how much you have to pay for all your taxes, by the time you're done, man, I'm not playing any games on the farm. I don't run any plant on the farm that I don't sell in batch, because otherwise everything has to get batch tested. If I'm running individual varieties, I got to get those tested, and it's become so expensive to do R&D that you physically can't do it. You can't afford it financially, and it becomes this trip into poverty to chase your cultivation dreams, which a lot of people do as cultivators, but they won't admit that it's not the right decision now. And so all that stock is held in another facility, and it's being opened up right now. And so it'll all pop out. When it does, we'll be able to pull some killer shit out and put it into the market, and it'll be great. And I'm not worrying about it because I'm not in a rush. It's funny, after I got ill, I feel calmer as an adult, where I always felt like I was always a little hungrier. And now I'm more relaxed, because there's nothing like a trip into near death and go spend some time on the other side to calm you the fuck down. When you come back, you're okay. You're like, it's all right. What matters is that we're here right now. And so, yeah, it'll sift out, and I'm excited to see it happen, because some of the stock that was the base stock was killer. I had a stunning 81 skunk out of Salmon Creek that was just, even in vegetative form, it filled the building with smell. The amount of scent coming off of that thing in volatile esters was incredible.